Apple did the largest redesign project in a while, and iOS 26 with liquid glass design is out, so we are going to compare it to Android 16 Material 3 Expressive. I am Mo, this is Tecmo, and if you don't know, I have a doctoral degree in the conjunction of AI and UX design, and I see lots of usability issues with the new updates. I can already predict this redesign is going to be controversial, even though I do see that both Android and iOS added a bunch of useful features. The first thing you will notice is that the icons on iOS 26 are shiny and glossy, like you are looking at the icons behind, well, glass. Moving to quick settings, where you can use two fingers on Android or swipe down twice, and on iOS you access it by swiping from the left side. The iOS had a total design rehaul. Now the background is completely transparent, but I have two fundamental problems with the design. First, everything looks like glass, and it doesn't feel like it is calling you to take action. Glass is not a clickable material. The second problem is visibility. I'm a young, techie guy with good eyes, and I have a very hard time finding the right button to click because the background icons are too dominant. And I kid you not, the first time I saw this design after downloading it, I reset my phone because I thought it was simply a bug and something wasn't loading. I don't think Android applied that many changes either, but there are a couple I appreciate. For one, they made their background a bit more transparent. And for two, now you can click on the smaller inner button to do the turning on and off action, and then click on the larger area to do other actions, for example, picking the right Bluetooth device or changing the mode. On iOS, you can also click on the modes and change them, but again, visibility is an issue and I can't really read what is written on the screen in each section. iOS has a search bar at the bottom of the screen, but now it also looks like glass. On Android, you have to swipe up to search for an application. Let's go to the default browser on each of them, Safari on iOS and Chrome on Android. Safari has two things that are better in terms of usability compared to Android. For one, the search bar is at the bottom of the screen, which makes it more accessible, especially on larger displays. For two, they now minimize the search bar, and after it collapses, you get the whole screen for browsing the web. I truly believe this is a great idea since most of the time we don't even use the search bar, and this way you get more real estate, especially on smaller screens like the iPhone 16 here. In the notification settings, we have the same problem. On iOS, it is very difficult to read anything since the background is too transparent. You can swipe the notification to the left to see the options. On Android, you get a new haptic feedback when you try to dismiss a notification, which is cool. They also added a very useful feature. The notification is now saved in a notification history. These notifications sometimes have a deep link, and it's happened to me many times that I accidentally dismissed a notification and just lost a certain page or promotion in an app. The recent app sections didn't have much of a change on either operating systems. On iOS, the recent apps are stacked over each other, and you can simply browse through them. On Android, the recent apps are next to each other. There is one change on Android 16 though. You can now click on the menu bar instead of holding the icon of the app to access some settings. For example, you can split your screen and select another app to see two apps simultaneously, which is a great feature for multitasking. One feature that iOS implemented nicely, and I wish Android had it too, is the dynamic island. Some other Android skins like One UI and MIUI have tried to mimic this, but Android itself doesn't have such a feature yet. Basically, when you minimize some apps like Spotify, you'll see the app playing music on the dynamic island. You can then hold that section to access the quick settings for the app or click on it to open the app. When you are playing music, you'll see the music controls in the quick settings. On both operating systems, you can click on the device icon, which lets you choose the device that's playing the music at the moment, and you can switch between them. Speaking of playing music, on Android 16, like previous Android versions, you can go to Media Control settings and change the volume for different purposes, for media, calls, ring, notification, and alarm separately, with a new design. On iOS, you can only turn the volume up and down, and they didn't add a feature to control your volume separately, which is a shame. The widgets didn't really change, and I'm surprised we don't see the new glass design on the iOS widgets. Not that I'm complaining. iOS has one useful feature that Android 16 lacks, and that's stacking widgets on top of each other. That's especially useful if you don't like swiping between pages like me. iOS has some new cool features to turn your photo into a spatial photo, and also some new wallpaper effects. I tried it with multiple photos and waited for a bit, but it never worked. It is a beta version now, and hopefully they fix it on release. On Android, they also added some new features for wallpapers. The most interesting one is that you can now apply the weather to your background wallpaper so it always matches the mood. For example, if it is raining outside, it reminds you how miserable everything is, so you get even more depressed. I recommend turning on this feature only if you live in Spain, Indonesia, or any sunny country. The lock screen is now also affected by the new liquid glass design. The music section now has this glossy feeling on iOS. Android's music controls stay rather intact in comparison. Camera is another area where iOS 26 made a lot of changes. Here, my opinion is a bit subjective. Basically, there are things like usability issues that a trained UX researcher and designer can pick up very quickly, like the lack of visibility in notifications and quick settings. But there are some design choices like the minimalism in the new camera app design that can only be confirmed through user research and user studies. As a power user, I can tell you I'm not super happy with the changes. That said, maybe in a user study we'll find out that most users actually prefer the new design. Anyway, the new design is super simple. You can basically only see the video and photo modes, and other modes are hidden. If you want to access additional settings, you have to swipe up, which is kind of nice because previously the settings were all over the place. If you want to go to other modes like portrait, you have to swipe to the left or right. It makes accessing the modes more difficult. But I understand this design decision for non-power users for two reasons. For one, the chances of accidentally hitting other modes is minimal now, and for two, the new design is less overwhelming for the user. When it comes to AI, Android has a great feature for a long time called Circle to Search, where you could hold the bottom of the screen for a second or two, then draw a circle anywhere on the screen to search for a certain picture or thing. Now, on iOS 26, you can do the same, but you have to take a screenshot first, which technically makes the feature a bit harder to access. On the bright side, the feature is more intelligent. For example, it immediately realized I was searching for a certain plant and showed me the information I was looking for without me even asking. You can also use a rainbow-colored keyboard to ask ChatGPT further questions about the plant or anything else you are searching for. The back gesture on iPhone is still as complicated as it was. The gestures are not consistent. Sometimes you have to swipe down, sometimes click on back button, and sometimes the back gesture actually works. The new change though is that the new gesture area is now much larger, which is great news, especially for people with smaller phones. I previously complained about this and how Apple is not considering the fat finger principle, and I'm happy they solved it. On Android and Pixel phones, we've never had the problem since you have universal back gestures by swiping from the left or right edge of the screen. There are other nice features too, like translation and changing messages background on iOS that I believe are steps in the right direction. That said, I still can't believe they want to release this liquid glass design. The same design philosophy failed with Windows Vista, and I don't believe many people will be happy with the new one either. They'll likely have to heavily tweak it before the release of iPhone 17. The good news is they still have time, and right now we are all Apple's test users. If you enjoyed this video, check out the comparison of the latest iPhone flagship versus the latest Android flagship, iPhone 16 Pro Max versus Galaxy S25 Ultra next. Thanks for tuning into Tecmo, and I will see you in the next one.